Alright guys, hello and welcome back to our next episode of our driver career mode here. We have 3 races to go as we're heading into the weekend with Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I believe Brazil and Vegas are our last sprint races. I don't remember how, because I know Coda was a sprint race, and I had to find out for myself that there were supposed to be 6 sprint races throughout the 2023 season, so that was a little unexpected. I thought we were only going to be sticking with 3, but with that sprint format, wet qualifying for a wet sprint, and then a dry race. So we're going to try to see about doing a medium for or the minimal changes compared to last week in Mexico, as we got stuck in the rain on a dry setup and a bad tire strategy on our part. So that was very unfortunate. If you guys did go see that episode before coming to this one, please go check it out. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and knock out practice, and we'll see you guys in qualifying.
Okay, so this light rain is going to be with us for a while now.
And with qualifying complete, let's review our top 3 today. Russell, Norris and Carlos Sainz. Goodbye for now then, but really we're just getting started. Make sure to join us again for Lights Out tomorrow.
Alright, so pretty odd qualifying here, as we do have rain compared to last week. We had qualifying in the dry, and I feel a lot better in this track, especially in Q3. We got a lot better control and comfortable with the car in the rain. And yeah, P5 is a formidable start. We started on a scrub set for Q2. We ran one hot lap on the first set for Q1. Q2 we ran a lap on the first set, and then ran another lap on the second set. And then I realized that I still had a required set of intermediates for the race that we can use for the sprint. So we did an old scrub set from Q2, our second set of inters for the first run of Q3, and then our third set of inters for qualifying for that final run. That's why we had a 2-second improvement off of our runs. We were feeling a lot of tire spin at the first run of this qualifying, and here qualifying 3 as the rain progressively got a little bit worse. But we're going to be starting in P5 for the sprint race. So let's see how we do in this rain and get right to it.
Well, the weather is not looking good today. We're expecting the downpours to continue into today's sprint. This will make for some very tricky conditions for all the teams. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. What a qualifying yesterday for George Russell. He'll start today's race from pole position, and Lando Norris lines up alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Sainz, Hamilton, Johnson, Perez, Gasly, Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, Leclerc, Bottas, Oscar Piastri, Ocon, Stroll, Ricciardo, Magnussen, Sargent, Joe, Hulkenberg, and Yuki Tsunoda. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out.
All right, you can see firsthand how kind of buggy the sprint race formats are because they don't go over the track and stuff like that. But it is a sprint race in the rain. Rain will be about 3/4 of the way through on one set of new intermediates. So we're going to go ahead and get right into this. And as we wrap up our formation lap, we have Hamilton there on the left side. And our tire's a little bit cold. I believe it was the core. I don't believe it was the outer part of it. I believe it was the core is a little bit colder.
There, mate. Let's make sure we get the edge on the surrounding drivers as the lights go out.
As Sergio Perez, P6
Keep an eye on the
behind
lights.
us.
The start sequence will begin as soon as the grid is formed. Be ready with the clutch.
As we transition to our 5 red lights there, we have Russell and Norris off to the front. 2 rows ahead of us, and Norris not to a great start. Russell staying ahead. We move to the outside against the Carlos Sainz. Hamilton moves in as well in the top 3, and then Perez there on the inside. We take it wide here through the rain, trying to take it easy as we give way to Sergio Perez. And we're holding up Gasly, Sainz, Verstappen, and Alonso there as they're side by side behind us. As we're trying to get traction on this very wet track, no roofs have been set other than the 4 people in front of us. Go a little wide there after the straight as Gasly, less than 4/10, no, about half a second behind us now off of that straight. Coming into sector 2, these bends are very cautious, have to be very cautious through these turns as we try to close the gap on Perez. But not enough. A quick lap through this track as we're already over halfway done. A little bit of wheel spin there as we staying single file in the rain. As we're coming up through sector 3, trying to see what kind of launch we can get out of this last corner on Perez. As we take a little bit more curve than we wanted to, going a little bit wide on that corner. That's close to the camera as we ramp out to the end of lap 1. Coming up the hill, we're only half a second behind Perez, and Gasly's trying to close the gap just slightly. As we're on lap 2 of our sprint race. There's not going to be much action because lap 7 was the next time we had some action here. We're about 10.3 seconds back behind Perez, holding on to P5. We end up going late on our brakes on the first right-hander, and we have to end up side by side with Gasly, and we're ending up giving him way as we have a little bit of wheel spin, and we managed to hold off Carlos Sainz for P6 for the remainder of this race as we're coming down through sector 3. Even though we still have a lap to go, that 10.6 gap between P5 and P4 of Perez and Gasly. There's a little bit of wheel spin there coming through sector 3, and we finish out the sprint race in P6.
Okay, pick up rubber and bring it home.
Now let's take a look at the drivers' standings. Our championship leader is still sat at the top of the standings, but their rivals have made up some solid ground today. With the sprint wrapped up, we now have our grid line up for the big race tomorrow. Be sure to join us then for what will no doubt be a fantastic race.
All right, so an okay race for us today. As we only lost 1 position in turn against Pierre Gasly and Sergio Perez. Carlos Sainz dropped back, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, Carlos Sainz dropped back, and I dropped back. And yeah, so a lot less wheel spin compared to Mexico, and yeah, Logan Sargent losing some positions, and Daniel Ricciardo losing some positions from P15 as well. The back of the field moving around a little bit. Daniel Ricciardo, Nico Hulkenberg. As that's our sprint race. Fernando Alonso losing position against Charles Leclerc. All right, so we have our grid start. George Russell, Lando Norris, still on the starting grid. Lewis Hamilton moves up, stays in the same row. Sergio Perez moves up from next to us. Pierre Gasly moves up next to us. All right, let's get to this race.
Formula One returns to Interlagos once again with the stage set for what promises to be another classic Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel famously clinched his third championship here in 2012, and just 4 years later, Max Verstappen treated us to one of the finest wet weather drives of all time. We're racing today then at Interlagos, a historic 2.7-mile circuit and one of the few anti-clockwise tracks on the calendar. 15 corners in total, 9 to the left and 6 to the right, with a technical middle section opening up to a flat-out Sector 3. That gives us our best passing opportunity down into Turn 1. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. George Russell will begin today's event in pole position, edging out Lando Norris, who'll start from P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Hamilton, Perez, Gasly, Johnson, Sainz, Verstappen, Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Ocon, Stroll, Magnussen, Joe, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, Bottas and Logan Sargent. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. Anthony Davidson is alongside me as usual for today's race. The last few races have been a bit rough for them, unable to get a clean run. That's got to have some effect on their confidence, surely.
Certainly confidence is an important factor. And every time you're involved in an incident, it's not just the car you damage, but that confidence as well. But all the top racing drivers are able to tune that out when the race gets underway and focus on the job at hand.
All right, so here we are for the main race. A little bit overcast, so we'll see some longevity on these tires. They'll want us to come in on lap 11, but we will see about coming in on lap 12 if our tires feel like it. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the race. Now on to the main event. Warming our tires a lot better here in the dry weather. You can see the middle section, I believe, is the outer edges of the tire. I wasn't sure if it was the core or not.
Okay, incredible parking there.
But
nice
this time
one. That's
around,
gonna give you the edge
P5,
if you can
P6,
get good
P7,
launch as the race
myself,
starts.
Gasly, and Sainz all starting on the soft tires here for a 25-lap race. Russell, Norris, Hamilton, Perez, Gasly, myself, Sainz, Verstappen. The Red Bull Perez off to an okay start in front of us. A little bit slow, but we move to the inside. And we end up side by side with Carlos Sainz through turn 1, coming down the hill. As Gasly and Perez are side by side ahead of us. We're trying to get the tow as best as possible and stay with this front group as Gasly slots behind Perez. We possibly looked at the inside, but we're not going to risk the move this early into the race. As we're coming up through Sector 2 now. And we miss our braking point there on the right-hander. Not really closing the gap to Gasly, but Carlos Sainz does manage to catch up a little bit, as that's how the first lap usually goes. Everyone's single file there, as we're coming up through this hard right-hander through the end of Sector 2 into Sector 3. If you haven't noticed, Daniel Ricciardo now in a Alpha Tauri in place of Nick de Vries, even though it's the last 3 races of the season. We finally managed to get that to work for our driver transfer mod. So we'll be looking forward to that for the off-season episode for Season 2. As we're moving on to lap 2 here, and there's contact between myself and Sainz, and we end up losing that position out on Carlos Sainz into P7, starting lap 2 of 25. using myself to split split the Ferraris of Sainz and Leclerc, moving on to lap 5. And it's Leclerc's turn to try to make a move down the Sector 2. I believe it's the end of Sector 1, start of Sector 2. Straight as Verstappen tries to make a move as well. He managed to hold the inside line. We end up losing 2 positions there on lap 5 against Leclerc and Verstappen, with Alonso close behind in P10. As we're coming up for Sector 2, our first warning coming for track limits there, as you saw. Carrying a little bit too much speed through that area, as we're moving on to an onboard with, I believe, George Russell. And once again, I do still need to fix that overhead perspective from the Mercedes. And yeah, it's George Russell causing a red flag with that spin, onboard spin coming through that right-hander hairpin as McLaren goes through it. This is going to be our perspective on lap 6. It was the following lap. You see there was a yellow flag, and as soon as we come up, it's a red flag. So we're not going to be getting any positions from that red flag.
Good chance to change our strategy for the rest of the Grand Prix if we want to.
All right, so what we thought was a safety car, we immediately realized with all those ghosted cars that was a red flag, and we faced them all. So we'll have to wait and see when that red flag came out and see if we made some positions, because we were defending pretty well against Verstappen and Leclerc. They did end up having better pace than us, so we let them pass. So we're gonna have to wait and see what we can do with the rest of this race. And looks like they're wanting us to run on medium, so we're just going to go ahead and do that. All right, we're on our restart lap 8 instead of lap 6 now. Back in P9. Verstappen had a Leclerc at the time of the red flag. We're off to a better start of Leclerc. And the Red Bull, Alpine, and McLaren. Bold move for us on the inside as we're side by side with the Red Bulls, who is a very hesitant move on us. We had to act really fast, and taking that inside line against the wall actually worked in our favor as we're P5 now, coming down that straight behind Sergio Perez, and braking a little bit earlier than we wanted to. Perez is breaking away off of that left-hander. Russell, Hamilton, Sainz, Perez, and myself are the top 5. Verstappen close behind, Gasly behind Verstappen in P7. Alonso, Norris, and Leclerc ran at the end of the top 10. As we're on this red flag restart, we went to the mediums for the remainder of the race. And if you notice, Perez ahead of us and Max behind us, they're both on soft tires. And we were expecting them to be coming into the pits later on during the race to guarantee at least 1 or 2 positions. We're rounding out the end of this lap here on lap 8, gaining a little bit of ground on Verstappen, as we're about half a second back behind Perez. And these front runners are trying to get away from us. And the overcast weather does not really help. And I'm pretty sure overall, towards the end, I realized how our setup was wrong. We ended up hitting the grass there, losing position against Verstappen. Gasly coming up close behind, trying to capitalize on that mistake that we hit the grass, and then the back end came out on us, as you see Gasly there on that left-hander at Sector 3 taking that position. And Alonso, you can see in the mirror, the left mirror, Alonso trying to make a move. We leave room for him, but we end up holding him out, because we take the inside line for the start-finish straight, trying to make a move on Gasly. But it's not going to be quite enough as of yet, as we're on the outside. We're going to be taking the inside. Alonso alongside us. Norris starting farther back than usual after a good start from him after the red flag. We're currently P7, lap 11. And next piece of action, we have Norris ahead of Alonso, trying to make a move on us on the main straight. On lap 14, end of lap 13, start of lap 14, gives the inside, forcing him to make a move on the inside. Carries a little bit too much curb, and he's going to be holding back as we're sitting here in P7 still. He's going to have to make another move on us. As Alonso's trying to make a move on him for P8. The Alonso side by side with Norris. As we're starting to feel these medium tires, a little bit of slip here and there after the back end came out when Verstappen made a move on us. as Alonso now ahead of Lando Norris, coming through Sector 2 on lap 16. There's a yellow flag ahead. That's going to be a Hulkenberg. There was a yellow flag in that sector for Hulkenberg with the engine failure. As Alonso makes a move on the inside, we let him pass by. As you can see, we missed that braking point again. Norris tries to close in here through Sector 2. There's a little bit more spin. And I realized, okay, we need to take it easy. Not put too much power down through this area, especially with the wear and tear that we're getting on these medium tires. As we're lap 16 out of 25. Russell, Hamilton, Sainz, Perez, Verstappen, Gasly, Alonso, myself, Norris, and then Leclerc for the top 10. Mercedes locking out the front. Sainz in P3, Perez and Verstappen, the two Red Bulls in P4 and 5. And it could be anybody's race as we get our second warning there for track limits as we ran out the end of lap 16. And only 2 laps later, at the end of lap 18 on to 19, Norris making a move on the outside. We have the inside this time. We push him wide. That way we can get a good run into the straight. But in turn, Norris is going to get the DRS and tow. You can see that 0.2 of a second closing as we try to hold the outside line. He takes the inside. Trying to see what we can do. A little bit of wheel spin there. Norris backs out because he wasn't sure what was going to happen. Another set of little wheel spin as there's a train of 4 cars behind us. Norris, Leclerc, Ocon, and Stroll from P9 to P12 behind us. And we're in the middle of the pack. Lap 19 out of 25. Because we're really starting to feel these medium tires. And we're trying to stay in the points at this point. As the end of the lap, Norris trying to make a move on the inside yet again like he did earlier in the race. As there's a little bit of contact on the tires, the front wing. Luckily there was no damage on the front wing as we made contact with him. And that little bit of wheel spin is going to be able to lose our gap on Norris as Leclerc tries to make a move up into P9, side by side through Sector 2. We have to give him that position, so we're back in P10. The last position for points is we're running out towards the end of the race. About 4 or 5 laps to go as we're trying to nurse these medium tires to the end of the race as we get our 3rd and final warning for track limits there. Because we have to fend off against Esteban Ocon. But shortly after, on board with Max Verstappen, P2 right now. As you can see, they're still on the soft tires, so we're almost done with the lap. And you can see he has a puncture there on the back left rear tire. The Ferrari, all those cars, Alonso, all of them passing through. He's going to have to nurse his car back to the pits. He's at the end of Sector 3. As you can see, us against a Ferrari passing. And then Lance Stroll passing him as well. So it's going to be a very unfortunate call on Red Bull's part for Max Verstappen staying out on those softs. It just tells you how Max Verstappen pushes the car more than Sergio Perez. As he limping back to the track. No chance of points for the championship for Max. As he limps back for a new set of soft tires around at the end of this race. But at that time, we're coming on to the last lap, and we're back up into P8 with the incident from Verstappen as he nurses back into the pits. And we're trying to defend as the Ferraris on the outside. There's Sector 2. And with that little snap of wheel spin, we were able to manage to hold him off as the Ferrari loses position on Esteban Ocon, I believe. Pierre Gasly's up there in top 5, if I am correct. I don't believe so, but that's going to be P8, I believe, for us at the end of this race. I'm going to see here for a second as we come up through the start-finish line. You can see Esteban Ocon, the Alpine, and the Ferrari out behind us.
A great race then, very much as we've come to expect, and a fantastic victory here at Interlagos. Tell me, Ant, how do they manage to achieve this win?
I feel like consistency was probably the key today. There's being quick, and then there's being quick lap after lap after lap. If you can do that, you can capitalise on other people's errors without making many of your own. And that's an approach that can push you a long way up the field.
And I can see the drivers starting to approach the podium for the victory celebrations. A real team victory today. Everybody played their part. Congratulations then to Mercedes, your race winners. George Russell takes the lead of the Drivers' Championship. So then, it's time to see how this result affects the Drivers' Championship. Let's focus on the driver of the day, Anthony Davidson. Who do you pick?
There's a few contenders, but George Russell definitely stood out, I think. A really solid drive from him today, and one I'm sure the fans enjoyed.
Let's move on to the constructors. Mercedes continue to extend their lead. Well, what an end to another fantastic weekend of racing. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and we'll see you for the next one.
All right, so there we have it. 21 drivers. Danny Ricc was on the board. De Vries is out. Logan Sargent finishing in. Oh, that's the standings. Results. Here we go. George Russell started in first, finished in first. Sergio Perez on those old softs. Old softs from that red flag restart. And at the very last moment, Max Verstappen with the DNF. He only got says he's on the board here, but he ended up getting a where was it? Oh, it didn't count it. There at the end, he must have gotten to the pit. Max Verstappen was having engine issues there in sector 3, that long run to the start-finish line. So I don't know. It was late in the race, so I don't know why it didn't register him. Okay, so he did finish. Oh, okay. He swapped over to a new set of softs, so he had to limp his car to the garage. Probably get a new wing. Probably had a punctured tire. I'll have to. If you guys, at this point in the video, you guys already know why. Why it happened, how it happened. We showed you guys that. But yeah, so we got 6 points, finishing in P8. Or no, that's, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Oh yeah, 6 points, finishing in P8. Or 4 points. Sorry, I'm looking at the grid slot. Started in P6, finished in P8. Those other cars here late in the race had quite a launch. So yeah, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez on the podium, and Mercedes basically securing their win for the constructor standings, because unless Red Bull can do really good, Mercedes wins the Constructors' Championship, and George Russell, with that late finish from Max Verstappen, George Russell is 6 points ahead, and Lewis Hamilton is in his league of his own. So Max Verstappen 6 points back behind George Russell. They're gonna have the last 2 races to fight for that championship. So we'll see you guys in the next episode.